If we want 2 plus 2 to equal 4, it will equal 4. If we want 2 plus 2 to equal 5, it will equal 5. Good afternoon. I'd like to talk to you today about something that I find very important, which is the contemporary application of Newspeak and other concepts from George Orwell's 1984. Just as a precursor to this video, I've tried to make this video and this piece of content a number of times, but because it's such a big idea and there's so many examples and it's hard to get all the support in there, I've kind of accepted that this initial video is going to be imperfect. So if it is imperfect, I'm okay with that. I'm sure you will all help me improve the next iteration of this and the next little piece that we add to this. Before I get into the concepts, let me talk a little bit about the book. These are from, the concepts that I'm going to talk about are from 1984, written by George Orwell. If you have not read 1984, I highly recommend you read it. It is one of my favorite books, and it is one of my favorite books not just because it has these really cool ideas in it, but because it is a well-written piece of craft. It is a well-written book. It has a very good story. The story is executed in an extremely effective manner. It has a very effective ending, and it's full of lots of great characters that really, really make you think. So I do recommend 1984, but you don't have to read the book to understand the big concepts. The big concepts in it are Newspeak, Doublethink, and Thoughtcrime. Those are the three big concepts. And the way that these are applied, 1984 takes place in a dystopian future where the world is essentially ruled by three socialist oligarchical empires. There's East Asia, Eurasia, and Oceania. Oceania is like North America and England, and it's ruled by the Ingsoc party, the English Socialism Party, or English Socialist Party. And those three concepts, Newspeak, Doublethink, and Thoughtcrime, that's what the party uses to control the population. Not just physically control them, like they have physical control over them, but they are attempting to control their thought and alter their thought. And one of the ideas that you hear in the book is that, it's 1984, but people don't really know what year it is. It's 1984 because the Ingsoc party has told you it's 1984. And that's an important concept. The idea that if you control people's thoughts, that you could control what the truth is. You could control what people view as the truth. So let me dig into some of these a little bit. Newspeak in the book is this idea. Newspeak in the book has two forms. The first form is this new language that they're creating, and they're creating the language by removing words from the language. And originally explained in the book are, the words that are removed from the language are unnecessary words. For instance, you don't need the word bad when you have the word good, because contained in the word good is the opposite of good, bad, right? So rather than saying that something is bad, you say it's ungood, and rather than saying something is very bad, you say it's double plus ungood or something like that. So it's like, you don't need the meaning of bad. And part of that is that if you, and I should say the second way, let me quickly explain the second way it's used. The second way it's used is by attaching words to things that are doing the opposite meaning of what the word originally meant. And there's some examples from the beginning of the book. The Ministry of Truth, which is concerned with lies, and I'll maybe dig into that a little bit at the end of the video. The Ministry of Peace, which wages war. The Ministry of Plenty, which taxes people. And the Ministry of Love, which tortures and punishes people. So these things do what we know as the reader as the opposite of those things, and they have attached to it words that are the opposite of their meaning to confuse and confound the people that are doing it. Now, at the heart of both of those uses, the elimination of words and the changing or the use of words, attaching them to an improper context, attached to both of those is this background idea that words represent concepts and that words have a fixed meaning. And this is actually kind of important to 1984. This is something that a lot of people on my channel have debated with me, is that words can change their meaning, or that the meaning of words is fluid somehow, and I don't want to misrepresent anybody's arguments, but there's this idea that the meaning of words can be changed, and the truth is the meaning of words doesn't really change. It's pretty much fixed, but people don't really want to think about it being fixed because language is anarchistic. There's no ruler of language who determines what a word means and what a word doesn't mean. Dictionaries define words based on their use. The use is decided, anarchistically and collectively. But at the same time, the meaning of words is fixed. And the way that we know it's fixed is that we can open up Shakespeare or Milton or someone else from hundreds of years ago and read the words and understand what they meant. The meaning of the words hasn't changed in hundreds of years, meaning they're fixed. And the writing down of words is part of what fixes their meaning. Because within the context of you using the word is a meaning from that time and that place. When you read it later, you extract the meaning of the word from that. So essentially, because literature is dead, including the Constitution, literature is dead, the meaning of the words is dead as well. It's fixed. It's fixed in place. And as long as things are recorded and written down, then the meaning of the words will not change, because if we go back and read a historical document, we're now pulling the new meaning out. A really simple example of this is the word nauseous. Nauseous actually means to create nausea. So a boat rocking, it's a nauseous rocking. It rocks nauseously. But people often say, I am nauseous. And we know what they mean by that. We know that they mean, I feel sick. I feel like I'm going to throw up. When they should say, I am nauseated. Nauseated is the, quote, the proper word. Well, does that mean that nauseous has now replaced nauseated or has become a synonym for it? Yeah, sort of. But if we go back and we read 19th or early 20th century literature that has the correct use of nauseous, then we are extracting from that literature back into our time that fixed meaning of the word. So as long as things are written, the old meanings keep coming back and reaffirming what the word means. And it's a 4-dimensional process, and it is anarchistic. But that's what fixes the meaning of words. So that's the background. Words are fixed, and people understand what they're meaning, and they are attached to concepts. And I don't want to get into metaphysics in this video because then it would just be atrociously long. But when the idea of Newspeak is that if you eliminate a word, you've eliminated the thoughts attached to that word, and you've eliminated the concept. So if you get people to stop saying the word freedom, if the word freedom is outlawed and no one talks about it anymore, then the concept associated with freedom will wither away from the collective thought, and people will no longer understand the concept. Because the concept is attached to the word. You cut the thread on the word and the concept withers away. That's the idea of Newspeak. And it's a powerful idea, and I think it can be effective in a lot of different scenarios. Now, the other two ones I do want to talk about briefly in this video as well, because they all interact with each other. Doublethink is the second one I mentioned. Doublethink is holding two contradictory views at the same time, which is very important. When you have the ministry of love, and it is punishing and torturing people, you are attaching to it the meaning of love. So you say it is about love, and it's also about torture. And those two concepts go past each other and don't really interact. That's doublethink. It's not cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is when you, when you're having trouble believing that those two things are the same. With doublethink, you just believe them at the same time, and there's no cognitive dissonance. And the third one is thought crime. Thought crime is very important in modern society right now. The idea of thought crime is certain kinds of thoughts are illegal. So what you cut out the concept of the language, you obscure the meaning of language using doublethink and Newspeak, and then anything that's left over, you straight up make illegal. It's illegal to think that. It's illegal to think that concept, and if you express that concept, you are a thought criminal, the worst kind of criminal. And then you will have that force used. And that's the way that the Ingsoc, the English Socialist Party, controls the population in the book. Let's talk about some contemporary uses of Newspeak. I mentioned nauseous kind of changing meaning. The way that Newspeak is really used today is sort of in that sense. Rather than eliminating words from the vocabulary, because that's difficult to do, although you can do it, you just stop using words. If you have control over the media, you just stop using certain words, and then they will just kind of fall out of use. And that's kind of what people may try to do with Newspeak. But the real way that people use it is they take a word with a fixed meaning and they attach it to something else, just like the ministry of love and the ministry of plenty. They take it and they attach it to something else that meaning should not apply to. And what people do is they take that fixed meaning of the word and the concept that's associated with it and attach it to this new thing, and that destroys the meaning of the old concept, or forces or makes people attach part of the meaning of that old concept to this new context that doesn't fit it. And the big example I'm going to use is the Department of Defense here in the United States. The Department of Defense was not always named the Department of Defense. It was once upon a time called the Department of War, a much more accurate title to what it does. Because right now we have a Department of Defense that engages in foreign war, right? We think of defense, we understand what defense is. We've all played soccer. When you're playing defense, if you're a sweeper or something, you're close to our goal. When somebody comes in and attacks your goal, you're defending it. So defense is an attacker comes and we defend. We're in our castle defending against the aggressor. That's all the meaning that's associated with the concept of defense. And we take that meaning and we go attach it. We say, now we have the Department of Defense. So automatically everything that the Department of Defense, formerly the Department of War, does is defensive. You have to believe that you will be inclined to believe it, I should say, because of this old meaning of the word now attached to Department of Defense. And I believe it was changed in 1949 is when it officially became the Department of Defense. It stopped being the Department of War in 1947 because we weren't fighting a war anymore, but we still wanted to keep around this big military because of the Cold War. So they renamed it the Department of Defense. First, I think it was the National Military Establishment, the NME, which did kind of accurately describe it because it wasn't actively engaged in war, but it was a military, and then it just became the Department of Defense. And we need to be aware of how the use of that word defense, the improper use of it, affects the way people interact with the Department of Defense. That is a piece of Newspeak, and it is straight up out of 1984. We have the Department of Peace, which engages in war. It's not all the way at the Department of Peace or the Ministry of Peace level. It is defense, but it does have an effect because we're bringing that meaning over, or it destroys the meaning of the word defense, right? That's a very, very important concept. I will give you another one that uses the same process, and that's when we take two words and just stick them together and destroy their meaning. And that's the example I'll use is social justice. I do recommend, I always recommend some cool books with this. If you haven't read The Quest for Cosmic Justice by Tom Sowell, give that a read. First, you should read Conflict Divisions. That's the first part in like his little, I don't remember what the third one was. He called it a trilogy of thought. But The Quest for Cosmic Justice really talks about the foundations of social justice and groupthink and some of the ideas of trying to create equality through active manipulation of people. And what I think I think this quotes from this, and I might be misquoting it because I haven't read it in a while, but it's like you take two words that are perfectly good, social and justice, stick them together, and then they lose all their meaning. And in The Quest for Cosmic Justice, he talked at depth about the drive for people to want to create equality and then attach it to these other concepts. So we have the concept of justice has nothing to do with social justice. Justice is a reactive thing. I go and I steal John's wallet and I get caught. So now I have to pay John because I stole his property. I have to give him the value of his property. And then I also have to be subjected to some sort of punishment because society needs to, or your community needs to know that rule breakers will face significant consequences to deter them from stealing in the future, and so that people feel that I've been punished adequately for my theft. That's justice, right? And there's lots of ways that people administer justice, and there's a whole bunch of discussions about that. What social justice does is it gets rid of that whole idea of like I stole John's wallet. It's John is black and I am white, and therefore I owe John something because his group was disadvantaged and my group was advantaged at some point due to no action of ours. Now, if I have my neighbor John and he's black and I owe him $50 and I go give him $50, that's That's literal social justice. We're having a social interaction, and I am rectifying my debt to him. Like, let's say I broke his sprinklers on accident, or maybe on purpose because I was a jerk. Well, then I pay for those sprinklers, and then now we've had social justice, right? Oh, but that's not what social justice is. In reality, what it is my neighbor has, because he's black, deserves money from, not from me, but from white people. And the third party, the government, takes it from me and gives it to him as part of this like group arrangement. So it's actually antisocial because we're not having any real social interaction over it, and it's not justice because I've not done anything to my neighbor, and he's not done anything to me. And even if we had ancestors that maybe his ancestor or my ancestor owed his ancestor debt, you don't inherit the debts of your fathers. That's not justice. It's not like, your father murdered someone, so we're going to hang you. It's like, we wouldn't accept that as justice. That would be a great injustice. So social justice is actually antisocial injustice. But we attach two very pleasant words together. Justice, people like justice, even from a young age. Children like the idea of bad guys getting punished. And we have social. So people at a very young age understand there's social interactions, and there's this thing called society. So it's like society's justice, social justice, but it's neither of those things. It goes against the society, it goes against your social interactions with other individuals, and it's not justice. And it is a form of newspeak when you really think about it. And they choose those words because there's two words that you can attach separate meanings, and you bring them towards this new word, and you say, how can you be against social justice? You are for injustice? It's like, no, I'm not for injustice because I'm not for social justice, right? And social, how can you be so antisocial by being against social justice? So you've combined words with opposite meanings to destroy the meaning of those words, but really to make people attach to those things the set meanings of the words that they already know and understand. Those meanings of words that haven't changed in centuries. And that's the way that Newspeak is really executed. Now, I'll give you another example, and that's the word liberal here in the United States. Liberal really means of or pertaining to freedom. So those of you who are watching who are not Americans, you'll probably have a pretty good understanding of what liberal actually means. Liberals in the United Kingdom or in Scandinavia or certainly most of Europe are people or parties, political organizations that are mostly concerned with the individual and with freedom. And there was this whole movement back in the 80s called the neoliberal movement, which just confuses the heck out of Americans because they're used to thinking of liberal as meaning socialist now. The socialists in the mid-20th century just adopted the word liberal. Because, I don't know, maybe they used to be liberals, maybe the party used to have liberals in it. In the 19th century, liberals were liberals, and in the 20th century, liberals were just socialists, right? They were social democrats, like democratic socialists. They're nothing to do with liberals. They're the most anti-liberal party imaginable. So essentially, that has actually been effective here. If you talk to a typical American and you say, I'm a liberal, they identify as, quote, a conservative, which they are probably not really a conservative either, but they say, I'm a conservative or I'm a Republican, and they'll be like, you liberal scum. They'll hate you for it because they will think of you as a socialist. And you have to stop, because I used to use the word liberal for myself. Like, I'd say I'm a classical liberal. I'm what liberal actually means, of or pertaining to freedom or liberty. And then people would be like, oh, you're a hippie liberal. I'm like, I'm not a hippie. I know I have long hair, but I'm not a hippie. I just think that people should be free to own themselves and do what they want to do. But because people have so much meaning attached, like, why do you want to run my life, liberal? It's like, whoa. Liberals want to do the opposite of run your life. They want you to run your own life. That's the whole idea. So we've destroyed the meaning of the word liberal. The Democrat Party in the United States has destroyed the meaning of the word liberal, utterly destroyed it, as for anyone that is locked in the typical sort of American political discourse. The word liberal doesn't really have any meaning anymore. Now, doublethink is important for how these work, because within doublethink, we have to believe that social justice is justice in social, while also understanding what social injustice mean. There is a doublethink that has to happen, because otherwise we're like, wait, this isn't actually justice and it's not actually social. So we just use social justice to say, I'm for social justice and I'm for justice and I'm for socialness. I'm for all these things, even though social justice is the opposite of those two separately defined words. It's very important to understand how doublethink works. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about thought crime. Thought crime is something that has been definitely growing in strength in the United States, and I think definitely in Western Europe, and has already been very well used in lots of other countries as well. The idea of thought crime is that certain thoughts are literally illegal. It is bad for you, it is immoral for you to think criminal thoughts. And I'll just give you an example. Racist, right? When someone calls you a racist, they're calling you a thought criminal, because the thought crime is that your race is better than another race. That's the thought crime, right? The thought crime is thinking that you're better because of your race. It's a thought, right? Racism is a thought as much as it's an action. So if someone calls you, he's a latent racist, it's like, well, that's a thought criminal because he hasn't expressed racism. He hasn't done anything racist. So racist is a thought criminal. A misogynist, sexist, illiberal, all these things are thought crime words. So thought crime is one of the ways that you eliminate the last suppression of any kind of idea, is that you make it, if not straight up illegal, and in some countries it is illegal to, there is no freedom of speech in countries outside the United States, and some countries have freedom of speech, some do not, and some severely limit it, so it's not really freedom of speech anymore. So that if you express some of these ideas, if you express racial or quote racist ideas, you could be subjected to legal punishment for expressing those. At that point, you are dealing with thought crime, because thoughts, and this is, I said I wasn't going to get into metaphysics, but a little bit. Thoughts don't exist. Only things that we do exist, because we can't see thoughts existing. The thoughts only exist to us. So in order for someone to actually commit a thought crime, they have to do or say something that is part of that thought criminal process. But we're also getting to a point where if you imply that, then you could be called a thought criminal. So if you talk about like differences in IQ between different countries, you could be called thought criminal. You could be called racist by talking about data, or by somewhat hinting that races might have different intelligence levels. That could be a very dangerous idea to some people, and that is a version of thought crime. So that's like the last nail in the coffin, is when they sort of outlaw certain thought crimes. And I will say that. I know the slippery slope is not really an argument, but you have to be aware that when you cede the power to control people's thoughts or control people's words in one capacity, they can now control them in all capacities. So if you say, all right, well, I'm not going to, I think it's fine that we're not allowing people to say racist things. Well, the next thing is you want to say something like you want to say something about Islam, and you're called a racist for that, even though Islam is not a race. Then all of a sudden you can't speak out about a religion. What else can't you speak out about? Pretty soon you won't be able to have a contrary position on anything. So thought crime is a very dangerous idea, and it's one that's gaining momentum in the American political sphere, and I think definitely in Western Europe. I think in Western Europe it's a much bigger deal than it is here in America. I only read news from overseas. I don't live there. So if you have a perspective from Western Europe or Eastern Europe or wherever you happen to be, please give me your perspective. Please let me know how these things are affecting you. So again, Newspeak, how we usually see it is we're taking two words that have predefined set meanings, we're sticking them together to try to create some doublethink, where we're thinking two opposite things at the same time by sort of attaching the incorrect meaning to certain concepts or certain actions. That's the big part. That's the big thing I want to get across with doublethink. And to understand that, you have to accept that most words have a very set meaning, and that the meaning of words is very difficult to change. Because of the nature of language, because we all use the same language. The fact that you understand what I'm saying to you means that English words mean something specific, and whatever language you are speaking to someone else in, it's the same idea. So those concepts are important. Please be vigilant for them. That's why I want to talk about them so much, is that we have to be vigilant for how they're used. I think they are used a lot in political discourse as part of rhetoric, definitely as part of propaganda. There's too many examples to talk about in one video, but please give me your examples. I want to know if you can think of some examples of modern Newspeak being used in an attempt to combine and create meaning where it didn't exist before, or to confuse meaning, really. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for joining me on this particular journey and listening to these very important ideas. I'm very, very appreciative of the feedback. Let's distill these ideas. Let's refine them. Let's make sure that we have a good way of explaining what we're talking about with Newspeak. And I am using the word "we." I don't want it to use improperly because I want participation from it. I want to know what the people who subscribe to this channel really think about this stuff. And yeah, please give me your perspective. I always do appreciate it. Y'all have a great day.